Hey everyone, it's Skiesti. If you're new here and don't know who I am, I'm a top 500 Mercy streamer and I offer VOD reviews over at my Ko-fi. Today's VOD review is gonna be a little different than our usual VODs. I've actually got something special for you today. So this Mercy player went from Diamond to Grandmaster in 2 months. I have a game that we'll look at from when they were Diamond and then one where they're GM. They struggle with when to use Valk, when to let the other support heal, and positioning, especially when it comes to when enemies have ults. They'd like to improve on general decision making and deciding who's better to pocket. And a concern that they have is that they make clunky guardian angels from time to time that put them in line of sight of the enemy. With all that out of the way, let's jump into the first game, which is a 3.2k game. We're only going to be looking at 1 round. Starting with team composition, your Ana will be taking care of the tanks, and your Tracer will be doing her own thing, so you'll be playing with Soldier. To damage boost Soldier again. I know it's fancy, but you don't need to super jump res here. You can just safely res behind the middle wall, and there's just no risk of losing res that way. Normally, after you cap, you'll start to want to take some space. You can back up your Tracer since she's kind of the only one that's moving up far enough right now. This is an unnecessary Guardian Angel. Watch going up or out of position when there's no need to. When you super jump, watch out for if there's anything above you that you'll hit your head on. Since Ren has shield plus a line of sight on Ana, heal him just a little so that he won't die, and when nade hits, then swap to Zarya. This whole fight is a little bit off. So as soon as Ren gets antied, I would swap to use Soldier as the main beam target in Valk. You tunnel on the Zarya since you want to res her, but you should be looking to the left since you're definitely not going to be able to get that res. Once Ana splits off, you could try to move beam to her instead and try to keep her up, but versus a high charge Zarya, and she'd have to be able to make it to the doorway, it's pretty unlikely that she'd live. Ideally, this whole Valk either happens as soon as you get it, or it's just saved for the next fight because this is a little bit scrappy. You can stay inside the hallway between your tanks and Soldier here. This lets you help Zarya when she's going up to get charge and poke at them. Be careful about standing in entrances when they aren't fully safe yet. You should still be further back, let Soldier clear, and then follow. This res is a little bit dangerous because Ana isn't really covering you for it, so your options are to make the res anyway, wait until Zarya turns away and your team pushes up to res at last second, or to leave the res and just let her respawn and res someone else as the fight goes on. Try not to GA in front of your team like this, let them push and then follow behind, since this is a dangerous position you GA to. So to avoid Blade, I would have super jumped back to Ana and gotten up into the air, then tried to attach beam over the wall to help, or just maybe retreat if that's what your team decides to do. You don't need to body block Zarya. You're much more likely to die than she is in this case versus a nano Genji. Try to play a bit further back from your team just in case. It's something that I notice quite a bit in this VOD is that there are moments like this where you're just like clumped up next to your team when you don't really need to be. Since the enemy Zarya is so pushed up here, even when her team is pulling back, it can be an indication that she has ult and wants to use it. Even if Zarya wasn't there, I would let Soldier walk out first before you do. Try to be with Soldier a little bit earlier so you have beam on him when he has a sightline on the entrance. Since Ana doesn't have a sightline on Zarya yet, because she's not quite there, you're gonna have to help her a little bit. I would have considered using Valk proactively for extended beam range to help her while still keeping yourself safe. You should consider using Valk to assist point rather than rezzing Zarya. And again, if you Valk proactively earlier, then you probably wouldn't have to res Zarya. You could try to play a bit more around the walls to keep Soldier alive better, but there is little you can do at this point. It's just the round's done. Alright, so let's get into the second game where the same Mercy is now 4.1k. Starting off with team composition again, Ana will be taking care of the tanks. Genji will sort of do his own thing, and you can help him from time to time when he needs to get ult charge, he's aggressing, or diving if it's safe for you, or if he's blading. Otherwise, you'll be playing with Ashe. I don't really have much to say about this first part. I thought you did a good job, so let's just skip ahead a little bit. You can try to predict that Ashe is going to coach gun up here because she should be taking high ground. So you can stand a bit more toward the entrance to GA up to her without pause. Should be safe doing that in this case because there's not too many people with a sightline in main that can target you. If you wanted, you could twist your Guardian Angel toward the doorway instead of on the opposite side of Ashe to make it so you don't have to GA across the choke point. And even if she doesn't mess up her coach gun here and is able to take high ground, you can go left and meet up with her that way. Try to catch damage boost for Dynamite a little bit more. Ashe doesn't have to be full health for you to flick to damage boost briefly here and there. Soldier is still coming back and Ryan dies, which means you're up 2 and don't need to valk. If you're worried about the critical tanks, you have res, and if one of them dies, you can bring them back after. Genji is way too far up and too low HP, so trying to help him isn't really going to be safe for you. Jing to Genji's soul after he dies is very scary, and I'm honestly terrified for you. You should try to pull back and change course as soon as he dies. You can stand on the ledge on the side of the building and occasionally peek the corner where Ashe is to keep beam connected. You can also stand inside the building if you'd like, but make sure it's clear and no one has a sight line. Be aware that you might get cut off if Ashe leaves, and also be aware that you'll have a hard time if you have to leave Ashe to peel for anyone temporarily. You could also float off the edge and GA up towards Ashe every now and then. This is done by triggering Angelic Descent so that you don't go too far down or drop too quickly. Should still be playing with Ashe. Take into consideration previous positioning suggestions to make sure you help Ashe keep high ground. Although it's just Moira up there right now, be careful about GAing to the high ground when your Ashe doesn't commit to it. This is cutting it a little close with the shatter. You can hover GA to the side of the platform using Ashe as an anchor until you know it's safe. If you were hovering Guardian Angel on the back part of the platform, you probably could have avoided high noon. Since you're committed to the right side with Ashe, you should try to be confident in that decision and trust that Ana can hopefully take care of your team in main. As for getting flash fanned by the Cassidy here, you can hear his boots above you. Try to listen for sound cues like that so you can position and prepare accordingly. I mentioned this ledge earlier. It's good to know that you know about it, but I would recommend taking advantage of it. I don't mind this valk because it serves the purpose of keeping your tanks alive and able to pressure with damage boost. Try not to let beam disconnect, you can just keep it on Monkey as he dives to Zarya. When beam leaves Ashe, you can beam Genji rather than having some time where there is no uptime. When the shatter comes through, you can super jump off of the Ashe to get high ground since the enemy team is pushing in, or keep around the pillars, like you do here. Ashe probably doesn't need to die here if you Guardian Angel up a little to keep beam on her. Jing up to Ashe and floating backward is good here so you're not standing out in the open, but be mindful about Jing too high up and potential beam disconnects. So you know the Hog is high ground because Genji just died to him, so be extra careful about Guardian Angel here. It's unfortunate that Ashe dies to High Noon, but you play this well to Void Hog and still be able to res the Ashe after. You keep heal beam on Zarya for too long. You should swap to damage boosting Ashe sooner and leave Zarya to Ana who has a sightline on her. Watch your positioning in this Valk since they're cast flanks and you take quite a bit of damage. If you're able to heal Ana up a little sooner or keep beam from disconnecting, you might be able to heal Genji a tiny bit before he goes in for Blade. Since the fight on point is getting pretty crowded, I would recommend super jumping up to the platform in the middle, the high ground, and assisting from there. It will also give you a better vantage point because it's a bit hard to see the health of your team when you're clumped on point. You also you don't need to be this close since it's just not safe. Keep in mind that when you do super jump up, Hog is behind, so care for Hook. And you also know that Cass is going to be behind at some point because earlier in the fight he dropped off high ground at back of point. And an alternative option to this, it's not as good, but you could position behind the point opposite of where Hog is, so near Bob, and help from there. But with that positioning, you run the risk of enemy spawns kind of closing in on you as they're coming back to the fight. Since the fight is still going on when you're coming back from spawn, you could swap Lucio or something just to get back faster, especially since you don't have Valk. Onto defense, our team composition, Ana will still be taking care of the tanks, and Cass is going to be providing more consistent damage than Hanzo, so you'll likely be with him, unless Hanzo has a better sightline or is using Storm Arrow. Oh my gosh. This is so scary. How to play further back to avoid getting pull hooked like this. Your Ana comes in clutch to save you, but yeah, just pay attention to beam disconnects and try to prevent them a bit better. When you're walking around to see if anyone is coming from behind, be careful about peeking the main sightline so you don't take damage. Stand a little closer to the walls or a bit more back so you're not in direct sightline of the window like we talked about earlier. Your tanks are critical, but they'll be going into Ana's sightline again soon enough. I think you can just stay up top with your DPS and have more contribution there. Could try to juggle healing between Cass and Ana a little bit better to try keeping both of them up. Instead of backing up, try to help Ana with Genji. The Hanzo Dragon shouldn't hit you, although I understand your caution since you're not sure where it's coming from exactly. Since Hawk is still pushed up so far, I would not Guardian Angel forward until he's dealt with or retreats a bit since you almost get hooked trying to go up. Try to be careful about peeking the main choke point since their Hanzo is still alive. You can keep beam on Cass throughout High Noon to support him. The beam flickers here a little, which is unnecessary and a bit dangerous since Cass still needs help pretty bad. Normally, I try to prioritize squishies in grab if it's possible to save them, but since Ana doesn't have a decent sightline on your monkey, it's okay to prioritize him so you keep your main tank alive. I will say though that once you make this decision, you need to stick with it since you'll only be able to save one person in this case. Care beam disconnects to make sure it stays on Winston until he has a safer health pool. Once Winston is healed up again, you can commit up top with Cass. You know that when their blade comes in, they won't have nano for it, so it's not as much of a worry. This might be a little controversial, but here I would have stayed with the team, built Valk, and then used Valk once you got it, and went back to res Ana afterwards since she'll most definitely die to their blade. Making this play instead of the one that you do allows your team to still have support since Ana won't be able to help them, and also you can easily just res after, although I know it's tempting to do a little bit of a BM and heal Ana throughout Genji Blade because my funny little beam outplayed your silly pool noodle ultimate. But yeah, anyway, I would have just played with the team, built Valk, rest on it after. If you had Valked when you got it and when Blade comes in, it would have been a good Valk, but this Valk happens when you're up 2 and you have res in case anyone dies. I'd encourage you to stay behind the choke point. Your monkey is a bit of a lost cause going up that far, and if you wanted to push up, I'd only go as far as helping Zarya once the enemy Hanzo dies. When Hanzo gets hooked, walk down the stairs through the back exit rather than forward. I know it's tempting since he's critical, but it's not worth potentially risking your life, and Nade comes in anyway to help him. It's also just less clunky than the path that you end up taking. The difference between this Mercy going from, instead of Guardian Angeling forward toward where the enemy is going to be coming from, you can just move backward and use the environment for cover or super jump to get height away from Doomfist. And that'll be it for this VOD review. I hope this was helpful. It's a bit of a different style, but I ended up with 2 VOD reviews and the Mercy ended up improving a lot because I took a long time to get to the first VOD review. Yeah, anyway. I hope that this is helpful for this Mercy and for others to see the difference between this Mercy going from Diamond to Grandmaster in such a short time. I wish you good luck in your future games. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you next time.